the victims' families in the Highland Park attack on 4th of July can finally now get some type of closure, or at least they're getting close to it because we still have a sentencing ahead. I've been following bits and pieces of this since it started for you guys, and we weren't allowed to see anything happen in the courtroom, but I think this trial is just full of such craziness that what happens outside the courtroom makes me want to keep following it. First, I want to mention the victims because it seems all of the news channels that have been reporting on what's happening with this him pleading guilty, none of them have mentioned these victims. They've thrown up a picture that lasts about 2 seconds and they bring it down. So I'm going to take a moment to say their name. Jackie was 63 years old. Nicholas was 78. Irina was 35. Kevin was 37. Catherine was 64. Stephen was 88. And Eduardo was 69. These were his victims. These people passed away when this little sociopath decided to make a name for himself. I don't know what his intent was. It's one of those things where it's just another teen who's been raised poorly and is just shouting for attention. But this guy is grown at this point. There's no excuse for his actions. He's just not right. We'll leave it at that. Let's get to the talks of this plea deal because you guys, the stuff that happened in this past week when he pled guilty was just insane.
Right now at 4 o'clock, an admission of guilt and sighs of relief almost 3 years after the Highland Park parade massacre. Robert Crimo III pleaded guilty this morning to all 69 counts related to this case. On July 4th, 2022, Crimo shot and killed 7 people and injured 48 others when he opened fire during that parade. Now, this plea change happened just as opening statements were set to begin.
The 24-year-old Crimo was facing 21 first-degree murder counts for opening fire on the crowds who had come to watch the Highland Park Independence Day parade in July of 2022. 7 people were killed and dozens were injured. The plea today has the same effect as Crimo, having been found guilty on all counts.
This was not a negotiation. This was not a deal. He made a free decision to plead guilty to every single count that this trial team and this law enforcement team was about to present to this jury.
Crimo had pled guilty before, but withdrew that plea at the last minute, creating an emotional roller coaster for victims and their families. Right now, Crimo is still in jail, awaiting his sentencing hearing. That happens April 23rd.
He received nothing in exchange for this plea today.
Lake County, Illinois State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt says without a word of remorse, Robert Crimo III pleading guilty to all 69 criminal counts.
There's a mountain of evidence in this case,
including 21 counts of first-degree murder and 48 counts of attempted murder in the 2022 Highland Park mass shooting that left 7 dead.
We were also prepared to present his voluntary confession that he gave that day to law enforcement.
Crimo III arrested hours after the mass shooting on July 4th, 2022, after reportedly fleeing from a North Chicago patrol officer. Later on, prosecutors and Judge Victoria Rossetti forced to deal with erratic behavior the last 2.5 years. The defendant in 2023, just months away from trial, relieving his lawyers to represent himself in court, changing his mind a month later, then agreeing to a 2024 plea deal, his lawyers say, before abruptly backing away and refusing at times to leave the jail for preliminary hearings and jury selection.
And we are learning more and more tonight about the suspected gunman in the Highland Park massacre.
That's right. What was he like as a kid? Were there any warning signs? I spoke to Gracie Sklamberg tonight, a young woman who went to school with the suspect from the age of 5 all the way through high school.
I have memories of him being really distant and cold if anybody did try to talk to him, showing up late for class, not listening to teachers. He had a dark mind and had been obsessed with guns and weaponry since I was really young, and would doodle weapons on his notebook. And that was something that a friend had brought to my attention the other day. That is a scary, maybe warning sign.
And when you heard the news that it was him, sadly, it wasn't a shock that it was him.
Yes, and I am speaking for myself there, but I do not think it would even be any what of an assumption to say that a lot of other people had very similar responses to me, that we were not surprised.
Robert Crimo III signed the name Donald Trump on his trial waiver after pleading guilty to the Highland Park parade shooting.
A copy of the waiver provided to the Sun-Times shows Crimo's name printed twice on the document dated Tuesday. But the signature line, look there, shows the name Donald Trump in cursive writing. The court's oral transcript recorded the plea. Legal experts tell the Sun-Times the erroneous signed document could open the window for defense attorneys to later argue the plea was not voluntary.
Oh, these victims do not need any more drama from this family. This man who has done this, it is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you guys, the crazy does not fall far from the tree. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. First, we're going to look at how the mother reacted to the guilty plea.
The guilty plea happening minutes before prosecutors were getting ready to read their opening statements, catching the courtroom by surprise, and quite possibly the mother of Robert Crimo III, who stood up and shouted out something about her son and the federal courts bringing the proceedings in the court temporarily to a halt.
This judge and all parties received 2 notices.
The defendant's mother, Denise Pacina, after her son's plea deal was read in court, repeating what she yelled out inside the 8th floor courtroom. The outburst prompting a forceful response from Judge Victoria Rossetti, asking the Lake County Sheriff's deputies to walk Pacina up to the bench, telling her, quote, "You are not a party to this proceeding. If you want to stay in this courtroom," Rossetti says, "have a seat and be quiet."
Okay, here comes Crimo's dad. This might be his own attorney. And here comes mom.
George, are you speaking? There's no comment at this moment.
Would you like to, if you could come over here?
19th Judicial Court received notice that this case is being removed to federal court. And again, they received notice this morning. Judge Rossetti received notice that this case is being removed to federal court. And that's why I said something in court. 52 immigrants related to the Sinaloa cartel are receiving U visas. And this is a government issue. I said you received notice that this case cannot adjudicate, cannot be finalized. You cannot.
What proof do you have?
Well, I have all the emails and I have. I mean, come on. The notice was sent.
Okay.
He said, "What proof do you have?" She goes, "I mean, come on, the notice was sent." My favorite is, though, watch this reporter's reaction.
So if you can still hear me, that was Crimo's mom. Honestly, not a lot of, nothing really clear. Nothing really clear said there. She was speaking something about adjudication, how she has emails, so a bit of nonsense. Anthony, if you asked if there was any talk of this case being relocated to another county, I don't believe so. I mean, this case was always set to be here in Lake County.
Casey,
so I'm not sure if that's
another...
what she's referring to here.
Okay. So here's the thing. This is all going to come to a close, but before it does, I had a while back done a video on the parents of this attacker because it was very similar to what was going on with the Crumbly trial, and we were invested in that trial at the time. I've now gone back and I've edited it down a good bit, and I'd like to revisit it because this is not normal. I don't know about the father. The father, he was guilty of signing off for this guy to get a gun, or his son to get a gun. But the mother, there's just something off there. So listen to their background of how many times the police were called to this home when this attacker was younger. This happened 4th of July in 2022. And this guy went into the Highland Park, Illinois Independence Day parade. And apparently he just started shooting people. It occurred around 10:14 a.m., roughly 15 minutes after the parade had started. 7 people were killed and 48 others were wounded by bullets or shrapnel. Authorities apprehended 21-year-old Robert Eugene Crimo III more than 8 hours after the shooting and charged him the next day with 7 counts of first-degree murder. On July 27th, the charges were upgraded to 21 counts of first-degree murder, 48 counts of aggravated battery. The incident is one of the 2 deadliest mass attacks in Illinois' history. It says that in downtown Highland Park, with the shooter firing a rifle from the rooftop of Ross Cosmetics building, he gained access to the elevated position by using an unsecured ladder attached to the building. He used a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 semi-automatic rifle with 3 30-round magazines, and a total of 83 shots were fired. The victims included spectators and some of those marching in the parade. At least one parade attendee provided medical treatment to those injured before first responders arrived. There was a manhunt. Over 100 law enforcement officers from multiple agencies responded to the shooting. The shooter ceased firing as law enforcement officers approached the building, causing the shooter to flee the scene and evade immediate capture. During his escape, the rifle Crimo used fell from his bag and was recovered by police within minutes. He then drove to Madison, Wisconsin area with a different type of semi-automatic rifle in his car. He considered attacking another Independence Day celebration in Madison, but decided against it. He discarded his cell phone in Middleton, Wisconsin. It was later suspected that after fleeing the scene, Crimo borrowed his mother's car and drove to Madison, Wisconsin, where he briefly contemplated a second attack. A driver from Waukegan and his passengers spotted Crimo's damaged 2010 Honda Fit on the southbound U.S. Route 41. Over the next 13 minutes, they relayed information to 911 operators that Crimo was stopped by North Chicago Police and Lake County Sheriff units at the intersection of U.S. Route 41 and Wesley Road in Lake Forest, Illinois, and he was apprehended at approximately 6:30 p.m., more than 8 hours after the shooting began. This guy's 22. So let me go into what I found on his father. A judge on Monday refused to dismiss the case against a father who helped his son obtain a gun license 3 years before authorities say the younger man fatally shot 7 people at the 2022 4th of July parade in suburban Chicago. He pled not guilty earlier this year to 7 counts of reckless conduct, 1 count for each person killed. Each count carries a maximum of 3 years in prison. Prosecutors had alleged that he helped his son, Robert Crimo III, obtain a gun license even though the then 19-year-old had threatened violence. You can't tell me he didn't know what was going on with his kid. But you know what? I guess this looks like the type of case that would be where his dad just wasn't in his life. He wasn't paying attention. He was working or whatever he was doing. Prosecutors said after the father's arrest that the accusations were based on his sponsorship of his son's application for a gun license in December of 2019. Authorities say that his son tried to kill himself in April of 2019 and was accused by a relative in September of 2019 of making threats to kill everyone. The father is a familiar face around Highland Park, where he was once a mayoral candidate and operated convenience stores. He was released on a $50,000 bond after his December arrest. So, see, I bet his dad is just one of those that just has no clue what's going on in his son's life. Okay, here we have something from the Independent. I'm going to go over here.
The suspect's mother is seen here in a confrontation with police on the 1500 block of McDaniels Avenue in Highland Park. The video shows SWAT teams standing on that street as she shouts and makes gestures, appearing very angry.
Suspect's mother confronted SWAT team hours after shooting. She's got a different last name. I guess they're divorced. She angrily confronted a SWAT team in the aftermath of the 4th of July mass shooting. Video obtained by CBS News shows her shouting and gesturing at officers in McDaniels Avenue, Highland Park, on Monday as a massive manhunt was underway for her son.
Robert Crimo III appeared in court today wearing a face mask, seated next to his defense attorneys. In July, a grand jury handed down a 117-count indictment against Crimo. He now faces 48 counts of attempted murder, 48 counts of aggravated battery, and 21 murder charges. The gunman's father, who also faces felony reckless conduct charges for allegedly helping his son get a FOID card, also attended today's hearing. In August, a judge refused to dismiss his case. Prosecutors said if Robert Crimo Jr. never signed documents allowing his son to get a firearm owner's identification card, the Highland Park mass shooting never would have happened.
This is the April 2009, and it's a well-being check. The complainant called from Des Plaines. He seemed intoxicated, and he requested officers check the well-being of a Denise Persina. That's the mother. He stated he talked to her for 10 minutes ago. He talked to her 10 minutes ago on the phone, and she was concerned that her husband/boyfriend Robert was coming home soon, and there would be a physical domestic. The complainant wanted a call back. They met with her, who said that everything was fine. All appeared okay. The narrative was he thinks his girlfriend was hit by her husband possibly earlier. David Daniels, mental disorder, intoxication. Yes, that's the caller. At residence wanting to speak with Denise Crimo. Oh, this is November of 2009. That's a different date. She did not answer, and Daniels called the police for a cab. Daniels was taken home by officers. It's just like all these cases. I mean, it's like they've got a long history with law enforcement, you know? Suspicious vehicle in November 22. So was she saying this guy was stalking her or something? They're talking about her, the mother. It says that his girlfriend Denise is home on McDaniels Avenue and said she was going to commit, you know what? She was going to hurt herself. The caller is intoxicated, but they spoke with Denise Persina Crimo, who stated she is okay and never said she was going to hurt herself and does not intend to. She stated that mentally ill and has called police on her before for false reasons. Then we've got a domestic trouble in July of 2022, July 6th of 2022. Wait a minute. This is after the shooting. Okay, let's see. Is this the one where the father is claiming to be the victim and that the woman, that the mother was the offender? So a domestic battery. Oh my word. See, this is what happens. On Tuesday, October 26th at 2:38 a.m., I responded to their address for the report of domestic troubles between a husband and wife. Upon arriving, I met with Bob Crimo, Robert Crimo Jr., who was sitting in his truck in the driveway. Bob related that he returned home from work at 12:15 a.m. and had a verbal argument with his wife, Denise. Bob related that he went upstairs, brushed his teeth, then informed his wife he was going to bed. While in bed, Bob related that his wife was trash talking. At this time, Bob left the residence to go sit in his truck. Bob then contacted Denise via phone to let him back in the house. Bob again laid down to go to bed. Bob then related that Denise came into the room stating she needed to remove the lock from the bedroom door if he was going to stay in the house. After removing the lock from the door, Denise then knocked all of Bob's belongings off of his dresser, then asked him to leave. Bob then left the residence, at which point in time he contacted the non-emergency number to file an incident. While explaining the incident, Bob related that Denise had hit him with a screwdriver on the left forearm, leaving a small scratch. Wait, this is not after the incident. This is before the incident. Officers attempted to make contact with Denise with negative results. A message was left on Denise's cell phone to contact the department. At this time, Bob drove to the station to complete a written statement of the incident. Bob refused to put in the statement regarding being struck by a screwdriver and simply stated she didn't try to hit me with it and it's nothing. They tried to contact Denise. She wouldn't answer the phone. Later in the day, another officer made contact with her and a witness statement was completed by Denise regarding the incident, stating that it was Bob who started the argument and that it was in no way physical. Denise made no mention of removing the lock from the door or hitting Bob with a screwdriver. And basically, they took it to the DA and they said, no, we decline charges. We don't have enough for charges. So it was just an incident. But this is his written statement. The father's. He arrived home from work. He went to lay down in the bedroom. Wife said, keep door unlocked. I said, okay. After a few minutes of her trash talking me, I left the house and went to sit in my truck. I then contacted her to open the front door to let me in. She said I was lucky that she had heard him since she had fallen asleep within that time. I then entered the house and proceeded to go up to the bedroom. After laying down, Denise entered the room and stated that she would need to remove the lock on the bedroom door if I'm going to stay. Oh, I said it's nearly 2 a.m. I will not lock the door. She then proceeded to unscrew the lock and removed it from the door. She then clotheslined my dressers, leaving my belongings on the floor. She then said, I want you to leave. I said, don't worry, I am leaving. At that point, I got dressed again and went downstairs to leave. Denise said that she is double locking the door. Do not bother to come back. I then went outside to my truck and contemplated calling the police to make a record that she was not feeling well from her hormones being out of line. I then proceeded to call to say that I wanted to make a incident report. I briefly told the dispatcher the story, and she told me she would send a car over. Now, here's Denise's side, you guys. She says when he came home, he was very irate, making mean statements to me, like always calling me names. I am tired of being called names and not having a place to sleep of my own in 8 years. He sleeps in the bed only. He got dressed and left Saturday. Sat outside. He got dressed and left, sat outside, then came back in. He got undressed and called me names, and I asked him to leave. He got dressed again, then left. At that point, I turned my phone off, locked the door, and slept with all of my children with the door closed. He threatens to call the police for any and every argument we get in. He says he wants the police to see I'm crazy. The argument was not physical. Obviously, the marriage isn't going well. So is he like getting ready to divorce her and he wants all this documented? Is that all this is? It says the caller was arrested for domestic, needs to pick up something from his home. He's in a blue Ford Escape. It says Mr. Crimo was present for less than 5 minutes to collect his belongings and a change of clothes. No other assistance was requested. That was in December after that fight, right? And then in May of 2011, they had a verbal domestic, possible intoxication. Robert E. Crimo Jr. and Denise M. Pacina had a verbal argument about going to see their ex-roommate, David Daniels, in Chicago. Robert refused to drive because she was intoxicated. Verbal only. Robert left for the night. This is August of 2010 at approximately 4:31 a.m. Officer Wagner and Bradish were dispatched to their address for a verbal domestic in progress. Upon arrival, Officer Wagner observed Robert Crimo and Denise Pacina Crimo outside in front of their single-family residence, separated but arguing loudly. Officer Wagner gave both parties verbal commands to calm down and separate further. Officer Bradish then arrived on scene and aided in their separation. Upon speaking with Mr. Crimo, he advised that he had just returned home from work and discovered that his wife, Miss Pacina Crimo, was intoxicated. Mr. Crimo said an argument ensued over their failing relationship and began to escalate. Mr. Crimo alleged that at one point his wife had taken off her shoe and struck him on the head. Mr. Crimo advised he called police before the situation escalated. So yeah, he's always the one calling the police. She's right about that. She stated that she was upset from events earlier in the day when she felt disrespected and belittled by her husband. She advised that she began drinking because of the comments. Denise further advised that the argument occurred as soon as her husband walked in the door. She explained that he walked in, gave her a disgusted look, and began commenting on her poor appearance. After officers determined that no evident physical contact occurred, the officer asked Mr. Crimo if there was another place where he could stay for the night, and Mr. Crimo advised that he was able to stay elsewhere and left the area. Upon his exit, the officer spoke with Denise about options in dealing with her troubled relationship. The officer Wagner offered her a domestic violence package. She refused, stating she already received one a few days ago when police were called to her residence for a similar situation. The officers encouraged the couple to seek marital counseling or separation to remedy their ongoing issues. Okay, so in this narrative, he walked away from the house after arguing with her. It was all verbal. This is ridiculous. He called the police because he got into an argument with her about her driving to pick up a daughter. Bob stated that because she was intoxicated. Bob said that she's in no condition to drive. She became irrational and he left. She stood behind his van and would not let him leave. Officers tried to speak with her to check her well-being. She was uncooperative. She stated that through the mail slot, she was okay and wanted Bob to leave. Maybe she's a drunk. Crimo left without incident. He has been staying out of the residence for the past few days and is not planning on returning. She stepped out of residence and appeared to be physically okay. That was June of 2011. She appeared to be okay, but was she intoxicated? Doesn't say. I mean, did he make that up that she was intoxicated? On June 12th of 2011, officers were dispatched to their address again in reference to a suspicious activity complaint. Dispatch advised to meet the complainant, Denise Pacina Crimo, regarding threatening telephone calls. Upon our arrival, I met with Denise. Denise advised that earlier she had received a text message from an unknown contact number stating "FU." She received another text message from the same number stating, "Want to know what's wrong with her husband, and I bet I will break her nose." Does that even make sense? Want to know what's wrong with her husband? I bet I will break her nose. Denise then called the number and a male answered the phone. Denise was not sure who she was speaking with, but the male told her, "You bitch, I'm going to break your nose." While on scene, Denise's story kept changing and her mood was very inconsistent. Denise advised she recently changed her cell phone number because she had been having problems with unknown people calling her. Earlier in the day, Denise advised she had a dispute with her friend David Daniels, for an unknown cause. So who is this guy and how is he related to the family? I attempted to contact David, but was unable to speak with him. I left David a voicemail message to contact me at the police department. I had Denise complete a written statement, which she signed. I completed a grand jury subpoena telephone records form, and no further action was taken. Her statement says, I received calls from David Daniels stating that his sister was calling DCFS on me. We talked, as we've known each other for a while. Look at her handwriting now compared to earlier. Do you guys see the difference? We talked as we have known each other for a while, and I looked up his brother-in-law's number on a paper. I called it tonight. His name is Eddie. He said that David was crazy and to ignore all of what he said. The other day, David stated to me that he is lucky I'm not abducted, in so many words. I have since received calls from an unknown number to me threatening my safety. I would like to press charges against the person who is continuously threatening my husband and my physical well-being. This person has threatened to sodomize me and break my back. I would like to press charges. Now, earlier it said break her nose. I would like to press charges, and I'm in fear of my life and of my children's lives and my husband's well-being. They subpoenaed her records. On August 3rd of 2011, Bob Crimo called the police to report his wife refusing to let him leave the house. According to Bob, he and Denise had engaged in a verbal argument about a prior traffic incident involving Denise and Bob's friend. Bob's friend flicked off Denise for almost colliding with him on the roadway. When Bob confronted Denise about the incident, the argument between Denise and Bob began. According to both Denise and Bob, there was no physical altercation between the two, just verbal bickering. Upon officer intervention, with Bob's approval, we suggested that he should just leave the residence for the night and not return. We instructed her to go inside the house and cut off contact with Bob for the evening. Both parties were provided with information on how to obtain an order of protection. Oh my goodness. Then he called in November 11th of 2011. So 11/11/11, Bob calls again, the father, Bob Crimo Jr. He called in regard to a suspicious incident involving one of his neighbors. This neighbor stopped by his house to give his wife, Denise, a bottle of wine. Robert advised William to leave his property, and the officer attempted to make contact with William with negative results at something. Officer will follow up. All is okay. Now, here's Denise's side of it. She says that on that day, she pulled into her driveway as her neighbor was walking his dog past her house. Miss Pacina felt uncomfortable exiting her vehicle due to romantic interest that Mr. Hollander has shown her in the past. Miss Pacina contacted the police department, but Mr. Hollander had left the scene without doing or saying anything. At Miss Pacina's request, Mr. Hollander was served with a written no trespass order for the home. She does not want any contact with Mr. Hollander and has stated that he understood. She said, I met him this neighbor while he was walking his dog on my street. We have been casual acquaintances for about 4 months. I pet his dog when he stops by my house. In early October, I noticed a change in him. He looks at me, and the frequency of him stopping at my house has increased. Late night stops became often, and he would ring my bell, and I asked him to stop. Then he started knocking and shining flashlights in my windows. He would linger outside for 20 minutes at a time. I asked him to stop. My children were scared. I felt a little afraid. I became much more nervous and afraid as his visits continued and would not stop. He would bring wine and ask me to drink. I said no. He continued and police were called. He lingers across the street and 3 days ago stood at the end of my driveway asking me to go for a walk. Today he waited outside of my car while I stayed locked inside of it for 15 minutes. I do not want him to contact me or my family. I'm scared for my safety. Okay, so she issued the no trespass. Okay, now we got a physical domestic in January of 2012. Normal people don't have this many police records. So we know that something's off here, right? The caller stated a female hit him and he is bleeding. Caller initially refused to give the address or his name. Upon callback, he stated the address. The caller will not answer the phone now. It was a verbal argument between this David Daniels guy, got something redacted, and Denise Pacina. No physical contact, no threats, no complaints to be signed. Daniels requested and given citizens assist to Starbucks, where he will take a train back to somewhere. Daniel was cooperative with the police department. So who is this? This is weird. This is like a third party thing going on here. That was January 9th. Okay, same day. 911 open line, male and female arguing. Phone number matches domestic from earlier today. Oh my word. This is later in the evening. Holy moly, wait a minute. What I just read before was at 3-something p.m. Cell phone number unable to determine location exactly. No answer on the callback. David Daniels. And I'm thinking, let's see, had verbal dispute with his girlfriend, Denise Pacina. Okay, so he's an ex of hers. But wasn't she still married at the time? So she's like seeing somebody else while she's married to what's his name? Okay, I don't know that. Let me get the records. It could be that they were completely separated or something. I don't know. Okay. Male white green jacket hoodie walking a dog. Suspect is standing on the sidewalk across staring at Bob Crimo. So this is that other neighbor. He said he's walking his dog and stopping across the street by his home and looking in the direction of his home and would like this to stop. Officers spoke with Hollander, who advised he was not close at all to the Crimo residence and only stopped to allow his dog to go to the bathroom. Hollander advised he would take his dog walks on a different route to avoid the view of the home. So we don't know if that's true or not. God, who do you believe? I mean, this kind of really puts you in the perspective of what the police come across and not knowing the whole story, you know? Or now we got November the 22nd of 2013. We got an intoxicated male, wife trying to keep him from driving. Then we've got male walking down the street with no weapons. So Robert Crimo had a verbal disagreement with his wife, Denise. They called the police stating Crimo was attempting to drive to work while intoxicated and would not let him get into his vehicle. No physical contact was made with the officers. Found Crimo walking away from the home, stated he was attempting to call a taxi to get to work to lock up his business for the night. Officers gave Crimo a public assist to Bob's Pantry, because it said in another thing that I read that he's like an owner of several convenience stores, where he was to lock up his business and wait for a cab to bring him to his father's home for the remainder of the night. All right, later on, August the 8th, 2014, Robert Crimo Jr., I guess he states that his wife will not exit his vehicle so he can return to work. Crimo took a cab to avoid further verbal argument with her, who was intoxicated. All vehicle keys were removed by Crimo. No further assistance needed. Domestic violence package information provided. Why does he keep calling the police on her? And why are they still together after all this? I mean, come on. That was at 10 p.m. Now we're going to go down because they were called back at 11:30 p.m. And a male was arguing with a female over moving a vehicle in the driveway. That was the narrative. It says that Robert Crimo Jr. reports that his wife is trying to have his vehicle towed from the driveway after she would not allow him to move the vehicle. The vehicle was not towed by Pro Towing, who was contacted by Crimo's wife. Crimo will be leaving for the night. No further assistance. These people are ridiculous. And you wonder why this child turned out the way he did. So if that was 2014, he was 13 or 14 when all of this was going on. This is the example that they've set for their children. December the 29th, 2014. Denise states a male subject only known as William, who lives nearby. Okay, here we go with the neighbor again. Shined a flashlight into her window approximately 30 minutes ago. She stated William has done this in the past and that she had signed a no trespass against him, but she could not produce one. Pacina did not know the man's last name or address. Pacina could not confirm whether it was the same man who appeared to be highly intoxicated while speaking with officers. Pacina changed her story multiple times, saying the man was on her front lawn alone shining a flashlight, and later stated he was running away with his dog down the block. Also on scene was her husband, Robert Crimo Jr., who stated he did not see this man on the property, but he did see a man walking down the block towards Deerfield Road with a dog, but could not confirm that it was this William guy. The area was checked. They were unable to locate this guy, and Pacina advised to call immediately if any subject shines light in house again. It said the husband and woman are very irate. They live in condos. They had previously had a problem with her, the stalking. Okay, so let's see what happened next. May 8th of 2019, they called the police to remove a dead possum from the road in April of 2021. They like to call the police. So this last one, she's reporting her card got stolen in transit to her and somebody else used it, but who knows? Who knows? Crazy family. Robert Crimo III had an apparent obsession with the number 4 and 7. This was his car, you guys. Look at him. This was a weird kid. In April of 2019, he threatened to kill his family. And there's the dad, who apparently has lost weight since then. They're saying that he apparently drew this picture. It's a mural depicting a gunman with a happy face. It's on the back of his mom's home. Holy crap. Okay, so they did interview him, and he said that the father, and he says that at one time, local mayoral candidate washed his hands of any guilt over how his son was able to obtain the gun. The father still sponsored the application 3 months after his son was labeled a clear and present danger. There she is again. He insisted he sponsored the application because he thought his son was going to use the weapon to go to the shooting range. I'm going to let that sink in because I'm letting it sink in here and I'm going, wait a minute. Oh, so that's all he, okay. So you sponsored gun so he could just go to the shooting range. You didn't think it, you knew he wasn't right in his head, but you didn't think anything past that. Okay, daddy. The dad says he bought everything on his own and they're registered to him. Total denial of any accountability in this. You know, he drove there, he ordered them, he picked them up. They did his background check on each one, and he insisted he has zero involvement in the massacre. Oh, now this is interesting. DailyMail.com revealed that Crimo and his younger brother were often left behind at their after-school program because their flighty mom forgot to pick them up. Police said they had no indication that she knew her son was the shooter when she agreed to let him take the vehicle. It was revealed that Crimo went to his mom's house and borrowed her car after the shooting and drove to Madison, Wisconsin. Her job for a living is an alternative healer. She angrily refused to answer questions from the DailyMail.com about her son and Monday's massacre as she unloaded her car. Live apart. So they do live apart. Well, thank God. Well, we know they do now because there would have been more police reports. Denise and Bob, the husband and wife, 58, Bob's 58, are not to believed to have been at the courthouse when their son appeared via the electronic link. So they didn't go to the courthouse. They didn't support their son. I'm not saying what he did is right, guys. I'm just saying another incident where you have the parents completely throwing their hands up, like, I didn't do it. I don't want any part of it. The couple lived apart. Priscilla lives in a little over a mile from the scene of the shooting, while Crimo's father has a home in Highwood, where the shooter lived until his arrest. Later in the afternoon, Crimo's father, Bob Crimo Jr., arrived at his nearby home in Highwood with 2 law enforcement officers. The dad led the officers, one of them with a pistol tucked in his waistband, to the separate apartment at the back of the property where the shooter lived. Okay, so he had his own place technically, but mom and dad were paying the bill. Okay, so all 3 were there for a few minutes before emerging at 4:50 p.m. Bob, in a black t-shirt and blue jeans, headed straight for the blue Nissan Rogue before backing out and driving off, and the officers headed in a different direction in a silver Chevy Suburban. At Wednesday's court appearance, Crimo spoke softly to tell the court that he did not have a lawyer and to ask for a public defender. He was dressed in all black, wore his long dark hair draped over one eye, and shifted on his feet as he appeared via Zoom from a room in the Lake County Jail. It was revealed that Crimo went to his mom's house and borrowed her car after the shooting. He drove to Madison, Wisconsin, and happened upon another 4th of July celebration before he was arrested. Police said they had no indication that the mom, Denise, knew he was the shooter when she agreed to let him take the vehicle. DailyMail.com previously revealed that Crimo and his younger brother were often left behind at their after-school program because of their flighty mom would forget to pick them up or their dad was at work. Between 2008 and 2014, they attended the LEAP after-school program. A sports coach in the program told DailyMail.com how out of hundreds of kids he taught over the years, the Crimo brothers stood out because their parents often left them behind. He said it, of course, did not explain why he committed such violence yesterday, but that the constant occurrences likely made him feel neglected as a child. It's unclear when the shooter's parents separated, but they no longer live together. The father's a local deli owner and a one-time mayoral candidate. His mother is an alternative healer. A video of her talking about the alleged healing powers of magnets and mindfulness made in March of last year is on YouTube. Oh, this is the coach. Remembers the father often being tied up at work or forgetting to make arrangements for Bobby and his younger brother. That's horrible. That's the apartment he lived in behind his house. I hate that his little brother is shown in here. I don't want his little brother to be seen on here. So they're saying that Bob Crimo, the coaches and stuff that worked with the school, after-school program, said that Bobby and Sam were quiet and reserved at the after-school sports program. And they said that the father seemed hardworking and nice enough, but always late, according to the coaches. Bobby and his brother were always the last ones. Either somebody forgot or they were busy to pick them up. The father had a business. He was routinely late, or the mom was routinely late. It ended up getting to the point where they had words with the faculty advisor. Nobody could get a hold of anyone in that house, he said. He added that Bobby and his younger brother seemed to get along and never caused any problems in the program, but that they were quiet. He was a little more reserved and shy, but certainly there was no sort of indication of anything sinister. The problem was more with the parents than the kids, he said. Crimo's parents have not yet commented on Monday's horror except to an issue of statements through their attorney. We are all mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, and this is a terrible tragedy for many families, the victims and the parade goers, the community, and our own. Our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody. Oh, okay. We got to listen to this. I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but we're going to listen to this.
Energetic mindfulness can mean many things. And we live in a world where we're getting a lot of electromagnetic frequencies everywhere, not only from the Earth's field, but also from like microwaves and computers and phones. And we're filled with energy. We have subtle energies of the body, and they usually start with vibrations. And what these vibrations are telling us usually is that it's something to focus on. Not necessarily that something's wrong, but something that needs to be shifted. And if we don't do anything about it, they can be causative of disease. And with the way we get better is by keep repeating it, and every awareness will bring on another. So it's like a rolling effect of waves of new awakenings that happen. Yeah. If you still, after some time, cannot feel anything at all, you can do what's called a muscle test. And a muscle test is what's connecting with your higher self. So connecting with your subconscious. So the first muscle test we're going to do is called a ring test. And so what you're going to do is you're going to make your fingers into 2 rings.
I'm not saying nothing else. Okay. He had dressed up as a woman to carry out the attack, then used his disguise to hide in plain sight among the frightened crowd as they tried to flee. He then went to his mom's house and borrowed her Honda Fit. He then drove out of Highland Park and managed to evade police for 8 hours before being apprehended. I totally forgot about that. Okay, so there you have it. Does that help you guys understand why this kid is the way he is? I know I keep referring to him as a kid. He's not a kid anymore, but you can literally go online. I know there's a couple of channels that dug into his history pretty deep because, he calls himself Awake the Rapper, and his YouTube channel is just strange as heck. But I'm not going to go there. I'll let you guys go surf the net if you'd like to. Now, as far as the sentencing goes, I don't really know if they're going to give us a whole lot of information. They probably will not allow cameras in the courtroom again. So if it's just a mere notice of what he was sentenced to, I will probably just post it in my community post here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and feel free to leave a comment. Have a blessed day.